Hi, everybody. Today I want to share some thoughts with you on procrastination, work ethic, and being capable. So the big text today, the title is called Stay to the Right. I read a story that was written by a Chinese person some couple thousand years ago. It's called Who is the Laziest? There's a funny story about laziness. 3 young men were lying by the side of the road doing nothing. A person passed by and asked curiously, what are you 3 doing here? They said, we are very lazy. We are lying here. We do not want to go to work. The person said, well, if this is so, you tell me how you are lazy. I shall give you $1 for the laziest person. If one wants to be lazy, one might as well be completely lazy so that others have nothing to say. One of the lazy ones said, I'm very thirsty. I'm both hungry and thirsty. I have a pear in my pocket, but I'm too lazy that I cannot take it out. Are you better than his? Are your story better than his, the story says? The next one said, well, that's nothing. The sun keeps shining in my eyes. It hurts my eyes, but I am too lazy to turn my head. The third person said, well, the 2 of them are not so bad. I am the laziest, he continued. I want to go to sleep very badly. I'm exhausted, but I am too lazy to close my eyes. I think you can relate maybe to some people like that in your life, that they are more lazy than you can imagine. There was a story in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew, that Jesus shared about a rich man who had people working for him that had to go on a long trip. So he gave 3 men a sum of money, and the role, the job, the task that this rich man gave to his employees was to invest that money in some way. So the first guy, he invested it and got a great return. The second guy invested his money and got an okay return. But the third guy didn't invest it at all. In fact, he buried it. He hid it because he didn't want the rich guy, his employer, to be upset with potential mediocre results. So he was afraid to take the chance, if you will, to do well. So the rich man came back and he asked his 3 employees what the results were and what kind of return he got back on the money. So the first guy come in and he showed him what the results were, and the employer was very happy. He rewarded him, and things went very well. The second guy came in and he got some good things too. But the third guy that came in, this rich guy, he just trashed him to pieces because he chose to take the easy way instead of taking a risk and trying to invest his money wisely. His boss expected increase. And if you stop and think about that in your own life, how sometimes fear, maybe sometimes laziness, gets in the way of us achieving the potential gain in our lives that we deserve. Because oftentimes you and I we have this mindset that only the best of the best, or only the smartest, or only the richest, or people that were born in certain zip codes are smart enough and wise enough to accomplish great things, but that's not really the case at all. There are people with great potential, but they refuse to even try to have an increase in their lives. They would rather wait until something happens instead of making something happen. So the boss, the rich guy I was talking about earlier, he really called this third guy lazy. He called him idle, I-D-L-E. He called him idle or apathetic or lukewarm towards life. How many people do you know in your life who are lukewarm about getting stuff done in their lives? They just want to wait around and hope something's going to come their way, or as the old saying is, they wait around for their ship to come in. Well, I'm not 22 anymore, and all these years I've been, there's no ship that's coming in. We have to swim out to it. We have to build it. We have to create it. There was once a story of a little bird who was very nice, but very, very lazy. Every day, when it was time to get up, they had to shout at him again and again before he would finally struggle out of bed. And when there was some job that this little bird had to do, he would keep putting it off until there was hardly enough time left to do it. People kept telling him, "What a lazy bird you are. You can't just keep leaving everything to the last minute." "Bah, there's really no problem," answered the little bird. "I just take a bit longer to get around to doing things, that's all." The bird spent all summer flying and playing, and when autumn came, you could start feeling the cold. They began to prepare for the long journey to a warmer land. But our little bird, the little bird was as lazy as ever. He kept putting things off, feeling quite sure that there would be plenty of time to prepare for his journey. That was until one day when he woke up when all the other birds were gone. Just like every other day, several of his friends tried to wake him. But half asleep, he told him he would get up later, and he had gone back to sleep and woke up even later the next day. That day was the day of the great journey. Everyone knew the rules, and you had to be ready to leave, the story says. There were thousands of birds, and they weren't going to wait around for anyone and everyone, so the little bird, who really didn't know how to make that journey alone, he realized that because of his laziness, he would have to spend the long, cold winter all by himself. At the beginning, you see, he spent a lot of time crying, but he had to admit that it was his own fault. He knew he could do things well, but he put his own mind, he put his laziness aside, and so he began to prepare for the winter. He spent several days looking for a place that was best protected from the cold. He found a place between some rocks, and there he made a new nest and well-built branches, stones, and leaves. And then he worked tirelessly to fill the nest with fruits and berries, enough to last the whole winter. Finally, he dug a little pool in the cave, and he would have enough water. When he saw that his new home was perfectly prepared, he began to train himself on how to get by on very little food and water so that he would be able to endure the worst snowstorms. And although, the story says, many would not have believed it, all these preparations meant that the little bird did survive through the winter. Of course, he suffered greatly, and not a day of that winter went by without him regretting having been such a lazy bird. When the spring finally came and his old friends returned from their voyage, they were all filled with joy and surprise, seeing that little bird was still alive. They could hardly realize that he was still alive. He was still breathing. And when they realized that not even a bit of laziness remained in his tiny little body, and that he had turned into the most hardworking bird of the flock, everyone agreed that he should be put in charge of organizing the next journey for next year. But you see, he had to learn the hard way. I wonder how many of us, maybe you, I've been there too, that we choose to learn the lessons the hard way instead of learning the lessons from people who have messed up so many times and learned lessons that could save you and I so much time and effort. There's a story in Matthew chapter 25 in the New Testament that talks about how some of the disciples, Jesus' followers, his students, were asking him, "When did we see you sick? Or when did we see you hungry? Or when did we see you in prison?" And Jesus, in summary, said, "When you help other people that are sick and lonely and hurting and have fallen on their face, you indirectly help me." Let me just let that sink in for just a moment. There's people all around you and I that are hurting. There's people in your workplace, in your neighborhood, sometimes in your own home that are hurting. And I think it's really important for us to understand that you and I have the ability sometimes to bring healing to these people. In that same scripture, in the same storyline in Matthew 25, it says that when Jesus was talking, he said, there are people in your life that were sick and you didn't help them get better. There were people that were homeless and you didn't help them find a home. There were people that were thirsty and you didn't give them anything to drink. There were people that were naked and you didn't give them clothing. The point being is there are opportunities all around us to make a difference in people's lives. And oftentimes you and I get so busy and so tunnel visioned on what we're trying to do that we forget about what's going on around us, when in fact there are opportunities all around us if you take the time to invest in the people in your life that may not be just like you. And that's been a challenge for some people, that maybe they want to hang around people that are like them. But in my life, I found that I learn more from people that are not like me. And sometimes that can be a little intimidating for some of us, because it's comfortable hanging around people that are like us, because we understand that we know what to expect from those people. Whereby people that are not like us, we're not really sure what we're going to expect. But if you have an open mind and an open heart, you can learn from them in a great way. I read a story a few years back. It says in this particular Indian place, there lived a very hard-working farmer named Gopal, Gopal. He had 3 sons, Ram, Laxman, and Human. All 3 were strong and healthy, but they were all lazy. Gopal was sad thinking about his sons and the future of his farmland. One day, the dad got a flash of an idea. He called all of his sons together. He says, "I have hidden a treasure in our farmland. You search and share the treasure among you." The 3 sons were overjoyed. They went to the fields and started searching, and one of the sons, he started from one end, and the other son started from the other end, and the third son started right down the middle. They dug each and every inch of the field, but they could not find anything. So the dad, when the sons came back, he said, "Dear boys, now you have told and conditioned the field. Why not we sow a crop?" Off went the sons to sow the crops. Days passed. Soon the crops grew lushly green. The sons were delighted. The father said, "Sons, this is the real treasure I wanted you to share." So the moral of that story is that fruits of hard work are always sweet. That is, that sometimes you and I have to, I don't even say sometimes, most of the time you and I have to pay a heavy price for a very long time if you really want to expect anything to happen. When I was, it sounds corny and probably stupid, but when I was a kid, I thought for some reason in my small child brain that there were some people that were born muscular, that they had the right genes. And I looked in the mirror and I just didn't have the right genes, I thought. And then as I got older, I realized that that's not the case at all, that these people invested considerable amounts of time to look the way they looked, because it just doesn't come easy. And some of us have thought, I know you've thought it, I know I've thought it, that it's easier for other people. I have to tell you that sometimes certain things are easier for other people. Maybe they can remember things better than you. Maybe they have more money in the bank than you do. Or maybe they have a certain family demographic that is, in your mind, better than yours. But there are people around the world that have achieved some seriously amazing things in the most destitute of situations. There are example after example where people have chosen to take a lazy way and then started blaming other people for situations in their own lives that they could have changed if they would not have been lazy. So here's some practical steps. I mean, I always want to share something practical with you. That if you find yourself in a situation of laziness, that there's several ways to kind of pull yourself out of that laziness, because I can't pull it out. I can't pull you out of it. Your family can't. Only you can do it. So if you break down the bigger tasks into smaller bites, that tends to make the challenge of the big task not so big. We often avoid tasks, maybe, or opportunities or challenges because they seem to be too big. And maybe we think it's going to take up a tremendous amount of time, when in reality, if you break it down into smaller bites, it makes it a whole lot easier to do. Have a vision of what that task is going to look like when it's done, and how it's going to affect or impact your life. Another way is to think about the benefits that you're going to gain. Think about how not only is it going to impact you, but it's going to impact a lot of other people around you. And just these programs I'm doing now, that my goal is to somehow share one or two ideas that you can walk away from that will help you in your week, in your life, maybe your family's life, maybe your coworker's life. Just one idea. I'm not saying you're going to get all this, definitely not, but just one idea. That's all I want. One or two ideas that will help you in your life. So I'll do what I have to do to make sure you get that one idea. Think about the consequences that if you buckle down and do what you're supposed to do versus if you continue to live a life of laziness, how much longer you're going to be postponing your dreams and your goals. And I can tell you, I'll just be as transparent as I can right now. I wasted so many years of my life because I was afraid. I was afraid of being criticized. I was afraid of being made fun of. I was afraid of looking foolish in front of people, not only in live audiences, but here in the studio, where I've got a camera staring at me and I might say something stupid or something might come out wrong. So the point being is sometimes you and I can be handicapped, or we choose to be handicapped in a way that will stop us from even taking baby steps forward. And again, that fear can absolutely stop you in your tracks. Thomas Edison said one time, "We often miss opportunity because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work." Think about that a minute. Overalls and looks like work. You and I have, I think, more of an opportunity every day if we look at how what we want to do can impact the people in our lives. Back in 2013, there was an article in the newspaper in Hood County, Texas. It said, "Baby Riley is safe after he was found starved by his parents, nearly to death." The young couple, Justin and Brittany, were sentenced to 60 years in prison after it was discovered that they had starved Riley because they were, listen, too lazy to take care of him. Last December, several teenagers were attending a party at the couple's mobile home in rural Hood County when they heard crying from the back of the trailer. What they found was horrifying. Baby Riley was lying there emaciated, covered in urine and vomit. The teenagers called an adult who brought him to the hospital, where doctors who treated him didn't believe he would live. Investigators believe that the parents may not have fed him properly for over 2 months. Brittany, the mother, told investigators when she was asked why she didn't feed this baby, she said she had other things to do, like getting the oil changed in her car, she said. The 21-year-old parents admitted, listen, they preferred drinking and smoking pot with their friends instead of taking care of their baby. And that, as you know, is an extreme example. But if you think about your life and the lives of people around you, maybe it's not so extreme, but they certainly have not taken the proper steps to take care not only people around them, but their own selves. I liken it to the story that I've shared multiple times, that when you fly in an airplane, the stewardesses, they get up and talk about, if there's a sudden loss in cabin pressure, the oxygen masks are going to fall from the ceiling. And if you're traveling with a child, it says this, to put your oxygen mask on yourself first, and then on your child. My takeaway from that is that if you don't develop yourself, if you don't choose to create an environment in yourself that gets you better and keeps you better, to keep you healthy, to keep you nourished, then how are you going to be a benefit to other people around you? It's like taking people on a ride, or at least asking people to go on a ride in your car, and your car's out of gas, or you're almost out of gas. That's not the way to do it. You have to take care of yourself in a very proactive way, and a way that's not by default. Because if you live a life by default, then nothing's going to happen. You're wasting years, you're wasting decades of your life waiting for things to happen instead of making things happen. A Russian scientist said one time, Inspiration is a guest that does not willingly visit the lazy. Again, inspiration is a guest that does not willingly visit the lazy. Can you relate to that? In fact, there's a scripture in the New Testament in the book of Hebrews, chapter 6. It says that we should be proactive. My paraphrase, my takeaway from it, is that we're supposed to be proactive and diligent. That diligent word is being proactive. In the Old Testament, as I shared not long ago, that we're supposed to keep our hearts with all diligence, our attitudes, our actions, our words, our deeds. There's an Old Testament story about Noah and the ark, and Noah was told that this great flood was going to come, and God gave him a tremendous amount of heads up in the Old Testament that you need to build this big ship. And what if Noah would have kind of been lazy about it? What if he would have maybe put it off until next year or the next decade to get started on this huge boat? Now, if you know the story of Noah, you know that this flood came and it took out a lot of lives. What if he would have been reactive instead of proactive? There's a story about Abraham in the Old Testament. His name then was Abram, that he was challenged to step out and do something that he had never done before. And as a result of him stepping out and doing something that he had not done before, the land of Israel in time was founded, and the Jewish people had a place to live. A story about Moses in the Old Testament. He was adopted by an Egyptian family, a pharaoh, a king's family. And over time, he realized that his birth family's people were slaves. They were being prosecuted. They were being persecuted. They were being harassed. They were being murdered. They were being worked to death. And Moses had enough of it. He was like, this has got to change. Now, he did some things that were not honest at the time and ethical at the time, but the long and short of it is that if he would not have noticed what was going on in his own heritage, in his own family, then the Exodus, as it's called in the Old Testament, would not have happened. So I think, in fact, if you know the deeper story, Moses tried to come up with all the excuses in the world why he couldn't do this huge task of leading these prisoners, if you will, these slaves out of Egypt into this new promised land. And I think you and I can relate to that sometimes. That sometimes the task seems so big and so large that you cannot see you doing it because it's so big. When maybe you are the only one, hear me on this, maybe you are the only one who has exactly what it takes to get it done, even though at the time you may not think that you have what it takes to get it done. I just share a side story. I'm being criticized tremendously for these broadcasts by a few people, not many, but a few people that have been criticizing me, thinking that I have all the answers and I've got it all together, and I do not. I want to make that extremely clear. I'm struggling just like you. But if I wait until I have all my ducks in a row and I have a perfect life, which, by the way, does not exist, then I'm going to be 85 years old and too old to do this and the other things that I'm trying to do to help people. The point I'm trying to make is whatever you try to do that's great, that's extraordinary, that's different, you're going to have critics. You're going to have people that are trying to tear you down and rip you apart. But if you stop and think about it, what are they doing to help mankind? Nothing. They're not doing anything at all. They're just being critical of other people that are trying to make a difference in somebody's life. I'm asking you today to not allow laziness and discouragement and the lack of your understanding that you're better than you think that can make a difference in people's lives that maybe you didn't think was possible. In the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, it says that without faith it's impossible to please God. For whoever comes to God must believe that he exists and that he's a rewarder of those who seek God. So that tells me that when you live proactively, that in time things happen. A paraphrase of this says this: God is a rewarder of those who put all their heart and their strength and their might into seeking him. Those who are so committed in their search that they are willing to, exhaust all their natural powers in their search for him, they are the ones who will find what they are seeking. Again, this reiterates to me, and hopefully to you, that if you and I are proactive in a very conscious way, that we are going to realize results much faster than people are living by default, that they're hoping and praying good things are going to happen. In Proverbs chapter 12, it says, diligence is man's precious possession. And if you expand that a bit more, it says, the plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty. So if you and I want to have a very proactive life, then we have to do things that are extraordinary. We have to do things that are proactive so that people in your life, in my life, can be impacted in a way that we cannot even imagine. So I'm going to encourage you today as I close to focus on what you can do, take small bites, take small steps forward in your life, and push aside that laziness, because laziness is not going to get you anywhere in life. My name is John Carver, and I thank you for watching.